Our story opens with the Yaucha Codex, a written creed declaring that the Yaucha are prey to none, friend to none, and predator to all. For those new to the Predator universe, the Yaucha Codex is a sacred and often unwritten set of moral laws that govern the Yaucha. We are then taken to Yaucha Prime. A spaceship flies by and lands at the beach, and the pilot is a young Yaucha warrior named Dek. He follows a trail that leads him into a cave. Inside, he scans the area and discovers his brother standing behind him. They immediately begin to fight. Despite his efforts, Dek is weaker and less skilled, and although his brother warns him not to fight with anger, Dek ignores him. Eventually, Dek is forced to the edge of a cliff, but when he refuses to yield, his brother Quay sends him falling into the abyss. Dek survives the fall, but his brother reminds him that he still has much to prove. Back aboard the ship, Quay speaks of the ancient tradition, explaining that a warrior must choose his own prey and return with its trophy to earn a place in the clan. While scanning the planets for his prey, Dek chooses to go to the death planet Genna to hunt the unkillable Kalisk. Quay explains that even their father, the clan leader, fears the creature. But this only strengthens Dek's resolve. He wants to return with the Kalisk's head and prove that he is not the weakest warrior, as his father claimed. Before Dek leaves on his hunt, their father arrives and asks Quay why he has not killed Dek yet. Quay says Dek deserves the chance to hunt like any other warrior. But their father laughs and calls Dek the weakest, saying he deserves no chance. He restrains Dek and orders Quay to kill him. But instead, Quay frees his brother and forces him into the ship. Since mercy is considered weakness, their father attacks Quay instead. Using his cloaking device, he overpowers Quay without effort. With his last breath, Quay powers up the ship and urges his younger brother to complete the hunt. Dek wakes up to violent shaking as the ship enters the planet's atmosphere at fatal speed, and he is forced to eject in an escape pod. The death planet greets him with again a vulture, but Dek activates the pod's armor plates to stop it before crashing into the forest. He recalls his brother's final words, "Bring it home," and begins preparing for the hunt as he checks his weapons. A sudden noise alerts him, and he carefully returns to the crash site, unaware that a vine is stealing his weapons behind him. The plant slips and makes a noise, and Dek spins around as the killer vine snatches his combi stick. Another vine lunges at him, but he cuts it down. More vines appear and surround him. These plants hunt in groups and use the land to ambush their prey. As he fights for his life, Dek spots an escape route and runs across the vine, jumping onto a rock just in time. Unable to reach him, the vines retreat. While treating his wounds, Dek finds a worm and picks it up, but the worm suddenly grows and glows red. Trusting his instinct, Dek throws it away just before it explodes. As he continues exploring the land, he spots again a vulture's nest on top of a rock. The area is surrounded by strange thorny plants. A voice suddenly calls to him from the nest, and the speaker can talk in his language. Before Dek can answer, the Genna vulture returns and starts dropping rocks at the sensitive plants. The person in the nest explains that the creature has learned to weaponize the plant's natural defense mechanism to paralyze its prey. She asks for his help and explains that she is trapped, but Dek insists that Yaucha hunt alone. She replies that hunting alone also leads to dying alone. She says she knows he is here to hunt the Kalisk and knows where it is. The vulture keeps dropping rocks, and Dek runs toward safety, but his movements trigger more plants, and he is struck by their thorns. With his vision fading, he throws his double-bladed weapon to her. The vulture swoops down toward him, but the woman launches herself at the beast and slashes it. When Dek regains consciousness, he discovers that his rescuer is an android, and he sees that half of her body is missing. She explains that she was built by the Weyland-Yutani Corporation and sent to the planet for research, since no human could survive the Death Planet. She tells him that her missing legs are located in the Kalisk's den and suggests they join forces. Bound by the Yaucha Codex, Dek refuses to work with her, but Thia argues that she has already proven her worth and urges him to trust her. Dek asks if she is merely a tool, and realizing this is the only way to gain his cooperation, Thia answers yes. With that answer, Dek finally agrees to work with her. As they continue their journey, Thia repeatedly asks for his name and about his world, but Dek remains silent. He has no interest in forming bonds and regards her solely as a tool to accomplish his mission. When they reach a river, they encounter acid-spitting slugs whose spit can melt even rocks. Thia throws them food she found, and the slugs stop attacking them. She explains that predatory organisms are her field of expertise, and that she has studied Yaucha culture as well. At the end of a long day, Dek settles down to rest. Thia tells him about Tessa, a rare android with feelings like herself, who specializes in tracking and combat. She recalls the moment Tessa allowed her to join the exploration squad, but that mission ended in disaster when the Kalisk attacked and separated them. Thia turns to Dek, hoping for a response, but she finds him already snoring. Meanwhile, Tessa is currently at the Weyland-Yutani base in a damaged state. A repair pod scans her and confirms that her core systems remain functional, so repairs begin immediately. When she reactivates, a cold recorded voice warns her that another failure will result in decommissioning. The voice belongs to a superior AI known as Mother. Tessa asks about Thia, but she is told that the Yaucha has her. The next morning, Dek reaches a field of stiff, razor-edged grass. Thia tries to warn him about them, but he silences her. He quickly regrets it when he touches the grass. Suddenly, an alien monkey appears and shrieks at him. Without hesitation, it rushes into the sharp grass to attack the same prey Dek is hunting, but the animal escapes. Dek chases after it and wounds the creature, but it breaks free by slamming him against a tree. The monkey pursues the injured animal, but Dek, irritated, attacks the monkey instead. The two clash, and Dek eventually captures the nimble creature. At that moment, the wounded beast returns to attack them. Dek hurls his sword with perfect aim and slices the beast in half. The monkey is impressed by his skill. Before Dek can enjoy his victory, a Luna bug suddenly grabs him and drags him toward its snapping jaws. Just before it can devour him, the alien monkey dives into its mouth and cracks the creature's teeth with its rock-hard hide. The Luna bug howls in agony and releases Dek. Dek snatches his sword and runs, with the alien monkey right behind him. The furious Luna bug follows close behind. Seeing that the Luna bug is now targeting the monkey, Dek cuts down a tree and uses it to leap onto the creature. He lands on top of it and plunges his blade into its weak point, killing it instantly. Meanwhile, Tessa finds Dek's pod, but the killer vines move in to attack. The group is ready for them. Dek shares the roasted Luna bug meat with Thia. She thanks him, but explains that she does not need to eat. The alien monkey waits eagerly, and Dek finally gives her some of the food. Thia names her Bud. Suddenly, Bud spits at Dek, making him angry, but Thia explains that Bud is marking him. She explains that it is Bud's way of showing she wants to be part of his clan, but Dek says he has no clan. When Thia asks about his family, Dek tells her he used to have a brother, but his father killed him. Dek wonders if Tessa is Thia's sister. The thought of Tessa as a sister is new to Thia. She smiles at the thought of having a family of her own. That night, Tessa finds Dek's spaceship and goes inside. She discovers that it is still operational. Tessa explores the ship and uncovers a hidden compartment where Quay keeps his weapons. Upon closer inspection, she discovers the grenades are capable of freezing targets when activated, and they are extremely rare cryo grenades. The next morning, Dek leaves Bud behind while she sleeps. Thia does not agree with his decision, but Dek tells her that Yaucha hunt alone. When Thia gestures to herself as his partner, he coldly reminds her that she is only a tool. At a waterfall, Dek finds a broken tusk and asks if it belongs to the Kalisk, but Thia stays silent. She is still hurt that he abandoned Bud. Thia explains that Bud spitting on him was a sign of trust. Believing this choice is tied to his past, she asks why his brother was killed. Dek says Quay died because of his weakness, and that weakness cannot be allowed in a clan. Hearing this, Thia tells him that wolves on Earth hunt together and that the alpha protects the pack. Dek answers that he is not an alpha who protects, but one who kills the most. They move on and soon reach the Kalisk's hideout. The wreckage of the previous battle is scattered around the area. While they look around, Thia finds her leg and initiates the repair procedure. Dek declares that today will be the day he finally gets his trophy, but Thia grows worried. She urges him to leave and explains that she has already sent a signal to Tessa to come find her. She warns him that Tessa will try to capture him along with the Kalisk. Dek refuses to heed her advice and declares that nothing can stop him before heading off to hunt the beast. Seeing no sign of the Kalisk, Dek sets a leaking fuel tank as bait to lure it out. Shortly after, Thia hears heavy footsteps closing in. The Kalisk is here, and Dek stands before the massive creature without fear. Suddenly, he is thrown through the air with his broken sword still in hand. Furious, Dek strikes back and slices off the Kalisk's tail, but it immediately regenerates and wraps around him. The Kalisk flings Dek into Thia, ruining her almost successful repair. She tries to move the bed, trapping her legs, but cannot. Seeing Dek in danger, she grabs a gun and opens fire on the Kalisk. The enraged beast focuses on Thia and moves in to devour her, but Dek hurls a tow hook and yanks its head away just in time. Thia waits for help, but Dek grabs the gun instead. He fires at the Kalisk to lure it into a trap, and it works. When its tail is caught, Dek rushes forward and cuts off its head. Just when Dek believes the beast is dead, it starts putting itself back together. The legends were true. The Kalisk cannot be killed. It pins Dek to the ground, ready to end him, but then calms down after catching his scent. Suddenly, a grenade drops, freezing them both. Tessa and her team have arrived. Dek wakes up bound to a bed. He sees Tessa, and Thia sits nearby, fully shut down. Dek demands that Tessa release him, but she ignores him and scans his brain instead. She is curious why the Kalisk stopped attacking him. Tessa powers Thia back on, and Thia smiles, happy to see her sister again. Tessa announces that the Kalisk has been captured, and the mother is pleased by their successful capture of the Yautja as well. She injects a serum into Dek and resumes the scan. Thia tries to protect him and says Dek is not useful as a test subject, but Tessa refuses to listen. Thia decides to stop the procedure herself. Tessa warns her that disobedience is forbidden, but Thia answers that they can be more than tools. They can be sisters. For a moment, Tessa feels it and senses a connection, but she shuts it down immediately. Thia explains that Dek is different, that he rescued her, and that he is the reason they were reunited. Tessa replies that she did not return to save Thia, but that she came back to capture the Kalisk and Dek. She declares that the weak must be discarded and says Thia is no exception. Thia is shocked by Tessa's sudden change of behavior. A guard then enters and tells Tessa that Mother has summoned her. Before leaving, Tessa commands the guard to lock Thia away and orders him to force Dek to explain the strange device taken from his spaceship. Dek sees this as an opportunity to free himself and tells Thia to play along. The guard does not know the Yautja language, so he believes Thia when she says she is questioning Dek about the device. Dek tricks him into turning it on, and it blows up in his face. Tessa and the guards are alerted, but Thia frees Dek and opens the escape door. Dek jumps out, and Tessa watches him disappear in rage. That night, wounded and exhausted, Dek returns to his ship. Remembering his brother's sacrifice hardens his resolve to face Tessa and find the Kalisk. He arms himself using the planet's resources, gathering explosive worms and even taming an acid-spitting slug. He goes back to the Kalisk's hideout to find Thia's leg, but there he meets Bud again. Seeing her grief makes him realize that the Kalisk is actually her mother. Dek spits on Bud the same way she once spat on him, and she happily accepts him. Next, he frees Thia's legs, and because they were already connected to her upper body from the earlier repair attempt, they begin to walk right away. The legs now guide him to Thia's location. Mother questions Tessa about Dek, but Tessa lies out of fear and claims he is dead. Meanwhile, Dek is already inside the base, quietly killing the guards with Bud's help. Thia's legs finally reach her and free her before taking down the guard. The commotion draws more guards to the area, and Thia pretends to be inactive. When the guards let their guard down, Thia and her legs strike, and after a fierce battle, they emerge victorious. Dek reunites with Thia shortly afterward, and she is happy to see him. For the first time, he calls her by her name. She is no longer just a tool to him. Bud joins them shortly after, and Dek reveals that they must save the Kalisk since the Kalisk is Bud's mother. The news stuns Thia, but she gathers herself and asks what their next move is. Dek tells her to focus on freeing the Kalisk while he hunts for his new trophy. Tessa prepares to transport the Kalisk, unaware of Dek's return. Dek triggers the alarm and draws her attention. She sends her troops after him, but Dek makes no effort to hide. They find him kneeling on the ground and approach with caution. As they move closer, the slug appears and spits at the explosive worms Dek planted. The blast destroys the synthetic guards in seconds. Soon after, Tessa arrives in a towering mech suit armed with Quay's plasma caster. Dek is shocked to see his brother's weapon mounted on her shoulder. She fires, but the slug sacrifices itself to save him. Enraged, Dek attacks, but every strike is crushed with ease. Thia finally finds the location where the Kalisk is being held, but the eye scanner fails to approve her scan. A guard appears and she pretends to be Tessa. Then, Bud appears wearing a ridiculous outfit, immediately drawing the guard's suspicion. Thia quickly knocks the guard out and suggests using his eye to open the container. Injured and bleeding, Dek hides while Tessa follows the trail of his blood. She lifts the generator, but he is gone. Green blood drips from above, and Dek attacks. Tessa activates her screen shield and taunts him, asking how it feels to be hunted. Hearing the Kalisk's roar, Dek leaps away and tells her to answer that question herself. The Kalisk is finally freed. Tessa uses the saw blades to fight back, but Dek yanks out the wires, shutting the mech suit down completely. Trapped, Tessa throws a cryo grenade in desperation, but Dek knocks it aside with an iron rod, ruining her plan once again. The Kalisk removes the saw blades and starts destroying the mech suit. Desperate, Tessa aims her plasma caster, but the creature swallows her whole, ending the battle. After a triumphant roar, the Kalisk approaches Bud and they share an embrace. She acknowledges Dek as well and accepts him as an ally. Suddenly, the Kalisk grows uneasy as cold breath escapes her lungs. She begins to freeze and explodes into fragments. A hairless Tessa rises from the dust and aims the plasma caster at Thia while calling her sister. Thia answers that they are not sisters, just as Dek strikes and shuts her down permanently. Bud tears off her head and celebrates their victory. Sometime later, Dek returns to Yaucha Prime and presents Tessa's skull to his father as a trophy. He demands his own cloaking device as a reward, but his father is unimpressed and he orders his two best warriors to take out his own son. But Dek dispatches them effortlessly. He challenges his father to a duel, and his father accepts. Dek is no longer the weak, young runt, but a skillful warrior capable of going head-to-head with the clan leader. He chops off his father's arm, and he restrains him with his own device. Dek's father confesses and says perhaps the right son survived. He orders Dek to yield and promises him a place in the clan, but Dek refuses, saying he already have his own clan. Suddenly, an older and larger Bud bites his head off. Dek claims the cloaking device for himself, and a fully repaired Thia congratulates him. Shortly after, a large Yaucha ship appears on the horizon. Dek readies his sword. He reveals that the ship belongs to his mother.